This is the story of Akosua, a brilliant young woman from Accra, Ghana, and Li Wei, a hard-working young man from Changsha, China. Two people from very different countries, with different cultures, different languages, and different lives, but they had one thing in common: true love. Akosua was an engineer in Accra. She worked for a company that built bridges and roads. She loved her work, and she was very good at it. One day, her company chose her to travel to China for a seminar about technology and engineering. She was excited. It was her first time in Asia. She had never been so far from home. Li Wei lived in Changsha. He didn't go to university, but he was smart and strong. He helped his family by selling fruits and vegetables at the local market. Every morning, he woke up early, went to the farm to buy fresh produce, and sold them in a small stall. He was always smiling and polite with customers. When Akosua arrived in China, everything was new for her: the food, the people, the streets, and the language. But she was curious and open-minded. One afternoon, while walking around the city after her seminar, she went to the market. That's where she met Li Wei. He was helping an old woman carry a heavy bag. Akosua smiled and watched him. When their eyes met, they both felt something very strong. They didn't speak the same language well, but they laughed and used signs to talk. That was the beginning of something special. This story will take you through their journey, their meetings, their distance, their culture shock, their deep connection, and their fight against judgment. You will see how two hearts from opposite sides of the world can beat together. Let's dive into this emotional love story and see how love truly knows no borders. Akosua stood at the airport in Accra with her small suitcase, holding her passport tightly in her hand. Her flight to China was about to leave. She was nervous but also excited. It was the first time she would leave Africa. She had never been on such a long flight before. Her mother gave her a warm hug and whispered, "Be strong and learn something good." Akosua smiled, waved goodbye, and walked toward the plane. The flight was long, over 15 hours. She stopped in Dubai before continuing to Changsha. On the plane, she listened to music, read a book about Chinese culture, and tried to imagine what her days would look like in this new land. She remembered what her manager had told her: "This seminar is a big opportunity. You are representing all of us in Ghana." When she arrived at the airport in Changsha, everything looked different. The signs were in Mandarin, the air felt cooler, and people spoke so fast that she could not understand a word. But Akosua stayed calm. She had practiced basic Chinese greetings, so she smiled and said, "Enho" to the taxi driver, who gave her a surprised but friendly smile. The city was big, with tall buildings, bright lights, and many people riding bicycles and scooters. When she reached her hotel, she was tired but curious. She opened the window of her room and looked at the city. "This is not Accra," she whispered, "but I will make the most of it." The next day, Akosua went to the seminar. It was full of people from many countries: India, Germany, Brazil, and of course, China. The event was about engineering and new technologies. She listened carefully, took notes, and asked questions when she could. Her English was good, and some speakers used English too, so she felt comfortable. But after the sessions ended each day, she felt lonely. The streets were full of people, but she didn't know anyone. She missed her siblings, the sound of Ghanaian music, the smell of waki and keluele. So, one afternoon, she decided to take a walk and explore the local area. That walk changed everything. As she walked through a busy street, she found a traditional Chinese market. The place was full of colors and life. There were fruits, vegetables, spices, toys, clothes, everything. People were bargaining and chatting. The smells were new but interesting. She smiled as she watched a woman cook dumplings on a small stove. Then, she saw him. a young man was helping an old woman carry 2 heavy baskets of tomatoes. He wasn't wearing a uniform or suit. He looked simple: jeans, a clean t-shirt, and sneakers, but he had a kind smile. Akosua watched as he placed the baskets on the woman's stall and bowed slightly. The old woman touched his arm and thanked him. That young man was Li Wei. Their eyes met for just a second. He noticed her, a tall woman with dark skin, wearing a bright African print scarf. It was rare to see someone like her in this market. He smiled. She smiled back. Then she walked closer, pointing at some apples. Li Wei came over and said something in Chinese. She didn't understand. She replied in English. They both laughed. He made a funny face to show she didn't need to pay, and she shook her head, laughing again. He took out his phone and used a translation app. Welcome to Changsha. She typed, "Thank you. It's my first time in China." They stood there for a few minutes, laughing and typing messages. He showed her how to say apple in Chinese. She taught him how to say the hello Lin Chi. It was strange, but it felt right. When she left the market that day, her heart was light. That simple meeting was the start of something powerful. She returned to her hotel smiling. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but something inside told her that she would visit that market again soon. Love sometimes begins in silence, with gestures and smiles. For Akosua, that new world no longer felt so far away. The next day, Akosua returned to the market. She told herself she just wanted to try more local fruits, but in her heart, she hoped to see Li Wei again. And there he was, arranging apples and oranges at his stall. When he saw her, his face lit up. He greeted her with a cheerful "N-ho," and quickly took out his phone. They laughed as they used translation apps to talk. They told each other their names. Akosua pointed to herself and said, "Akosua." He repeated it slowly. "Akosua." She smiled and said, "Yes." He pointed to himself and typed, "Li Wei." Although their words were few, their eyes and smiles said more. Every time they met, they understood each other better. Akosua started learning simple Chinese words like thank you, xie sui, and goodbye, zaijian. Li Wei, in turn, tried to say simple English words like beautiful, which made Akosua blush. In the days that followed, she visited the market more often. Sometimes she bought fruit, sometimes she just walked around, hoping to chat with Li Wei for a few minutes. He began saving the ripest mangoes and juiciest oranges for her. One day, he gave her a small red paper fan as a gift. "For Ghana, son," he typed. She laughed and gave him a small bracelet from her bag. "From Ghana," she typed back. Despite the language barrier, their bond grew. Li Wei even used his phone to show Akosua pictures of his family, his little sister, and the rice fields where he sometimes worked. She showed him pictures of Accra, her office, and her younger cousins playing football. One evening, after the seminar ended, Akosua sent Li Wei a message, "Leaving soon. Back to Ghana." He replied, "Sad. I miss you." Her heart felt heavy. She didn't want to say goodbye. The next day, he gave her a note, written with the help of a friend. It said, "Maybe distance big, but my heart stay with you." When Akosua left China, she carried more than souvenirs. She carried memories of sweet moments and a new feeling she had never known before. On the plane back to Accra, she looked out the window and whispered, "I'll come back." Back in Ghana, life returned to normal. Traffic in Accra, engineering projects, and family dinners, but her mind was often in Changsha. She and Li Wei began messaging daily. They used English, Chinese, and even emojis to talk. They shared photos of their days, food, markets, smiles. Sometimes they called each other, even if the connection was not great. Time zones were difficult. When it was morning for her, it was night for him. Still, they made it work. They saved money to buy better phones. They worked harder to earn enough for one day, a plane ticket. People around Akosua were curious. "You met a Chinese man?" Some asked. "Can this really work?" Her mother was worried at first, but when she saw her daughter smile and heard her voice while talking to Li Wei, she understood. For Li Wei, things were not easy either. His friends joked about his African girlfriend. Some people at the market looked at him strangely when he talked about Akosua, but he didn't care. "She is strong, smart, and kind," he told them. In time, what started with smiles and fruit became something deeper. Love, not in the same language, but in the same rhythm. They promised to meet again, and they were ready to fight for their love, no matter the distance. Months passed. Akosua and Li Wei continued their long-distance relationship. Every day, they sent messages. Every week, they had a video call. They shared their dreams, their worries, and their cultures. Even though they were thousands of kilometers apart, their hearts felt close. Akosua saved money from her engineering job. Li Wei sold more fruits and helped his uncle with deliveries to earn extra cash. Their goal was simple but hard, to buy flight tickets and see each other again. Their first reunion happened 8 months after Akosua returned to Ghana. She flew to China again, this time, not for a seminar, but for love. Li Wei waited for her at the airport with a big smile and flowers in his hand. When they saw each other, they didn't need words. They hugged tightly. The moment was full of emotion. Nearby travelers clapped and smiled. During her visit, Akosua stayed for 3 weeks. She visited Li Wei's home. She met his mother and sister. His mother didn't speak English, but she smiled kindly. She served Akosua homemade dumplings. Akosua offered her traditional Ghanaian beads as a gift. They laughed, pointed, and slowly began to understand each other. Li Wei also took Akosua to the countryside to see the rice fields. She helped him pick vegetables, and he showed her how to cook local dishes. In the evenings, they walked in the city, holding hands, watching the lights. But their time together ended too quickly. Saying goodbye again was hard. Akosua cried at the airport. Li Wei held her hand and said, "Not goodbye, see you again." Back in Ghana, Akosua's friends were surprised by her story. Some supported her, others doubted. How can you build a future with someone so far away? What if he finds someone else? But Akosua believed in her heart. Li Wei had the same challenges. One market woman said, "Why love a woman who doesn't even speak your language?" But Li Wei smiled and replied, "Because her heart speaks clearly." Over the next year, they took turns visiting each other. One time, Li Wei came to Ghana. He wore a simple kaftan Akosua had sent him and greeted her family with a polite bow. Her younger brothers laughed but accepted him. Her grandmother, who only spoke Chi, smiled when Li Wei helped her walk to the garden. They explored Ghana together, from Makola Market to Cape Coast. Li Wei tasted jollof rice and learned to say "Medas," thank you. He loved the energy of the people and the bright fabrics. Though he missed his home, he felt welcome. Each trip made their bond stronger. They learned to trust each other deeply. They celebrated birthdays through video calls. They sent gifts by post, a handmade scarf from Accra, a jade keychain from Changsha. Every act showed love. But long distance was not easy. There were days when the connection was bad, and they couldn't talk. There were days when one of them was sick or tired and needed comfort. Sometimes they felt lonely, but they reminded each other of their dream, to one day live together in one place. They started planning. They discussed marriage. Where would they live? Ghana? China? A third country? They didn't have all the answers, but they had one strong foundation: love without borders. Even when they felt the weight of culture, language, and distance, they held on. Their love was not a fairy tale. It was real, with challenges, but also with deep joy. One day, Akosua sent a message, "Let's get married." Li Wei replied, "Yes, forever." They were ready to begin a new chapter. Akosua and Li Wei were deeply in love, but they knew that planning a wedding was not going to be easy. They came from very different cultures, with different traditions and expectations, but they both believed that love could find a way. They first talked about where the wedding should happen. Akosua's family wanted the ceremony in Accra, where all their friends and relatives could attend. Li Wei's mother wanted something simple in Changsha. In the end, they decided to do two ceremonies, one in Ghana and one in China, to respect both cultures. Planning was difficult. There were language problems, paperwork for visas, and financial pressure, but step by step, they moved forward. Akosua asked her best friend to help organize the Ghanaian wedding. Li Wei saved money from his business to pay for his flight and wedding clothes. The Ghanaian wedding was colorful and full of energy. Akosua wore a beautiful Kent dress, and Li Wei wore a cream-colored agbada sewn by a local tailor. Friends and family danced to high-life music, and traditional dishes like banku, tilapia, and jollof rice were served. Some people were still surprised to see a Chinese groom, but the joy on Akosua's face made everyone smile. Li Wei struggled with the food at first but happily joined the dancing. He even practiced a few Chi words to say during the ceremony. He said, "Medas Pa," and the crowd laughed and cheered. After the Ghanaian celebration, it was time to prepare for the Chinese ceremony. Akosua had never worn a chipao before, but she looked stunning in red and gold. Li Wei's family decorated their home with red lanterns and banners with Chinese calligraphy. Neighbors came to see the foreign bride and taste dumplings and rice cakes. The ceremony was simple but emotional. Akosua bowed to Li Wei's mother as a sign of respect. Li Wei gave a short speech and said, "Even though we are different, we are one heart." After the wedding, they returned to Ghana, where they planned to live. They found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Akosua continued her engineering work, and Li Wei opened a small shop selling imported Asian products and fruits. People in the neighborhood came to know him and liked his kindness. But not everything was easy. Some people stared at them when they walked together. Some clients didn't want to buy from Li Wei's shop because he was a foreigner. Akosua received questions like, "Why not marry a Ghanaian man?" Still, they stood together. Akosua held his hand proudly in public. Li Wei smiled at everyone, even those who didn't understand. They knew that love takes courage, especially when the world doesn't always understand. What helped them was their respect for each other's culture. Akosua cooked Chinese rice porridge sometimes, and Li Wei helped prepare light soup. They taught each other words and songs from their native languages. They even started learning a third language together, French, to plan future travels. 1 year later, they had wonderful news. Akosua was pregnant. They were going to be parents. When their son was born, they named him Kwaku Wei, a name that joined their two worlds. Looking into the eyes of their child, they saw the result of their patience, love, and strength. He had his mother's smile and his father's gentle eyes. They promised to raise him with both Ghanaian and Chinese values, respect, family, hard work, and love. Love is not always easy. It faces judgment, distance, and fear. But when two people decide to walk the road together, hand in hand, nothing can stop them. For Akosua and Li Wei, love truly had no borders. Life as a young family was both joyful and challenging for Akosua and Li Wei, with baby Kwaku Wei now part of their lives. Their home in Accra became a place full of love and learning. Every morning, Akosua prepared to go to her engineering job while Li Wei got their son ready for the day. He would feed him, change his clothes, and sing him lullabies in Mandarin. Li Wei's shop started growing slowly. At first, customers were unsure about buying from a Chinese vendor, but his calm nature, helpful attitude, and the unique products he offered won people's hearts. He sold soy sauce, rice noodles, fresh fruits, and also some Ghanaian spices. Locals became curious, and soon his shop became known as Wei's Corner. Akosua worked hard at her company. She was respected by her colleagues and admired for her intelligence and dedication. But she sometimes faced small comments about her marriage. People joked or asked rude questions. She stayed strong and reminded herself that her family was her strength. At home, evenings were sacred. The small family had dinner together. Sometimes they cooked banku, sometimes fried rice. They made it a tradition to share stories from their day. And even baby Kwaku, though still very small, smiled and babbled at the sound of his parents' voices. Weekends were their favorite time. They often went to the park, visited the beach in Labadee, or explored new parts of the city. Li Wei loved taking photos, and their home was filled with pictures of sunsets, their baby playing in the sand, Akosua laughing at a market. Their love grew stronger every day. They taught each other continuously. Li Wei took English lessons, and Akosua started using Chinese apps to learn Mandarin. They wrote notes on the fridge in both languages, helping each other pronounce new words. Kwaku would grow up hearing 3 languages, which made them proud. But financial life was still hard. Raising a child was expensive, and Li Wei had to work long hours. Sometimes Akosua helped at the shop on weekends. They had to manage every cedi carefully, saving bit by bit for their son's future. They didn't have a car, and sometimes they walked long distances with groceries and a baby on their back. Yet they never complained. Instead, they made plans. They dreamed of opening a bigger shop one day. Akosua hoped to design a modern bridge in Ghana with her team, and together, they dreamed of taking Kwaku to China so he could see where his father grew up. One day, they received a letter that changed everything. Li Wei had been selected for a small business training program in Accra, supported by a local development NGO. The program offered training in business management and gave small loans to entrepreneurs with strong community impact. Li Wei applied, with Akosua's help translating the forms. He was accepted. He started learning how to manage accounts, advertise his products, and improve customer service. With a small loan, he bought more goods, decorated his shop, and added signs in English and Chi. His business grew. Now he had regular customers, and even small schools nearby ordered snacks and fruit from him. Akosua was proud. She called him my entrepreneur husband with a smile. Through all this, they continued to build their love and teach Kwaku to respect both of his roots. They celebrated both Chinese New Year and Ghanaian Independence Day. They told Kwaku bedtime stories from both cultures about the Monkey King from China and Anansi the Spider from Ghana. Their journey was not perfect, but it was filled with real effort, shared values, and deep love. They showed their neighborhood that love between cultures could work, not in a dream world, but in the real one. Together, they were building something strong, not just a family, but a life of hope, respect, and unity. As the years passed, Akosua and Li Wei continued to grow together, not just as a couple but as a family. Kwaku Wei started school and quickly became known for being friendly, smart, and curious. At home, he would switch between English, Mandarin, and Chi with ease, impressing visitors and teachers alike. Akosua and Li Wei often spoke to young people and couples in their community about love and respect. Many were curious about how they made it work despite being from different worlds. They always answered honestly, "It's not easy, but love is not about perfection. It's about patience, kindness, and learning from one another." Their story even caught the attention of a local journalist who wrote about them in a newspaper under the headline, "Love Without Borders, A Ghanaian Chinese Family's Journey." The article brought messages from couples around the world facing similar challenges. Some were in long-distance relationships. Others were afraid of family rejection. and some had never believed such a union could be real. Akosua decided to start a small blog where she wrote about her experiences, cultural tips, family recipes, and stories of hope. The blog became popular among multicultural families and inspired others to share their own journeys. Li Wei added videos in Mandarin showing how he cooked Ghanaian dishes. They were both amused at how many followers he got. They also began volunteering at schools, teaching kids about different cultures, encouraging respect, and helping fight stereotypes. During international days, their family was often invited to speak or share food, and people loved their fusion dishes like fried rice with spicy shito sauce or kelewele with sweet Chinese tea. But even with the joy came reminders that the world still had prejudice. Sometimes, people made jokes. Other times, they were stared at. But Akosua and Li Wei never let hate win. They taught Kwaku to be proud of his roots. You are from two strong worlds. Never forget that. They visited China once when Kwaku turned 7. It was an emotional trip. Li Wei's mother hugged them tightly, and Kwaku ran through the rice fields his father once worked in. Akosua stood in the middle of the village and said softly, "Now I understand this part of you." That trip connected them more deeply. Back in Ghana, they organized a community event called Hearts Across Borders, where families of different nationalities could come together, eat, laugh, and tell stories. The event grew year after year. What started with 20 people turned into hundreds attending from different communities. Their message was always the same: love is bigger than the color of your skin, the country of your birth, or the accent of your voice. Love is about the heart. Years later, Kwaku stood in front of his classroom during a presentation about family heritage. He held up a photo of his parents and said, "My mommy is from Ghana, my daddy is from China, and together, they taught me that love is the most powerful thing in the world." Tears welled in Akosua's eyes as she listened from the back of the room. Li Wei took her hand. They had come a long way, from a crowded market in Changsha to this moment of quiet pride. Their life was far from a fairy tale. It was full of challenges, sacrifices, and hard work, but it was also full of laughter, learning, and deep, lasting love. And so, they became more than just husband and wife. They became a symbol, a living example that when love is true, it doesn't just cross borders, it builds bridges. The story of Akosua and Li Wei is not just a tale of love, it is a testament to the power of courage, patience, and open hearts. Through different continents, languages, and cultures, they built a bridge of trust and understanding that many never dare to imagine. Their journey teaches us that love is not always convenient. It may ask you to travel long distances, face judgment, learn new customs, and endure separation. But if love is real, it brings growth. It challenges two people to become better, to see the world through each other's eyes, and to create something unique and lasting. Akosua and Li Wei started as strangers in a foreign market, and through gestures, smiles, and curiosity, they created a language of their own. Despite the barriers, linguistic, cultural, and social, they found unity in their values, kindness, respect, and hope. They chose each other every day, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Their story reminds us that no culture is superior to another, and no love should be limited by borders or judged by appearances. When two people are willing to walk side by side, learning from one another and facing life's storms together, they create a love that is powerful and transformative. As parents, they passed on these lessons to their son, teaching him to be proud of both his roots and to be a bridge himself between Ghana and China, between past and future, between tradition and change. In a world that often divides people by difference, Akosua and Li Wei offer a different example, one of harmony, of listening, of daring to believe in a future where hearts, not passports, define connection. So, The next time you hear someone say that love cannot survive distance, or that people from different worlds cannot understand each other, remember Akosua and Li Wei. Remember their journey, their struggles, their laughter, and their triumphs. And let their story inspire you to love bravely, to see others deeply, and to build bridges where others build walls. Love knows no borders, and in the end, it is love that makes us truly human.